Okay, welcome, day 62. If this is your first time here, my name is Angela Wren, and this is a series I'm doing where I kind of explore ideas on like how to practice art or how to learn art rather than focusing on, specific elements of art. So if you've been here before, you notice I'm in a bit of a new location. So I do a lot of traveling in my personal life, and I just arrived to Italy where I'll be for at least a month, I think till the end of January before I head back to New York City. But I have this like really cool setting behind me, and it's actually like a beautiful day here, even though it's the end of December. So we'll use some of this natural light and some of this background as like motivation for today's video. And I actually have something that I think is really interesting to talk about. This is a monologue that I've kind of been meditating on for like a few days, and it kind of came together today, and so I'm excited to kind of share some of my thoughts. So I recently was reading like some different content on or some different ideas on that come from like Stoic philosophies. So if you know anything about the Stoics, like they kind of have this mentality of of trying to understand things as they are and detaching yourself. It's actually has like a lot of parallels with kind of Eastern religion and kind of these ideas like that are inherent in religions like Buddhism or Taoism. But really this idea of like detaching yourself and seeing things as they are. And there's one kind of like really famous philosopher who's kind of made their way into Stoic, into kind of like let's say the common vernacular of Stoicism, which is a samurai by the name of Miyamadi Musashi. I'm not sure if I'm saying that exactly correct, but if you spend any time at all learning about the Stoics, you've learned about this samurai. So he's from Japan, was from Japan, an ancient samurai, and actually is considered to be one of the like greatest swordsmen that ever lived. And in addition to being known as a swordsman, he also spent kind of the later half of his life, interestingly enough, as an artist, and then also as a philosopher. And he put together this text that's kind of this like, version of Stoicism that comes from what he learned in his life as a samurai. But there's one really great quote that he has in there, and I have it written down right here. And it says, "If you know the way broadly, you will see it in everything." And you can kind of take a second if you want and think about what that might mean to you. But I think I have a really nice interpretation of it that applies to kind of this whole philosophy of how I'm practicing art and how I think about practicing art. And so the way that I see this, if you know the way broadly, you see it in everything, is that really there's only one way to learn anything. And once you know that way, you can use that to do anything that you want, to learn about any part of your life. So if, for example, you understand how to master or to get it to a high level in art, you can apply that to cooking. You could apply that to working out, like something physical or athletic. You can apply that to something philosophical, like learning about, maybe meditation or spirituality. But the idea is if you know how to learn, if you understand the fundamentals of mastering something and learning it, then you can apply this to anything. So again, you know the way broadly, you know how to learn something or mastering it, you see it everywhere. And I think we've touched on this quite a bit in the series about, this idea of like pushing through and having to be consistent and use like consistent daily practice. And I think the reality is that's really what you use to really learn anything. But today I want to talk about like a little bit of a deeper concept about a specific thing on how to learn that I've found that's been helpful for me, that you might find helpful as well for you. And so the idea here is I've been doing these 12 days of figure drawing. So if you kind of look through the past, I think, let's say we're on day 10 right now, I think roughly day 9, day 10. If you look at the last 8 or 9 videos, it's all been these really long figure drawings. So about 1 hour, and I was trying to study the proportions, the gesture, and the posing of these different figures. And one of the things that I recently found in my last couple drawings is that they seem to be missing some kind of important elements. Like they're stuck a little bit. I would almost say they're plateauing. Like I made some progress probably with like the first 4 or 5, kind of understanding a bit better these ideas of gesture, proportion, and posing. And then, I kind of plateaued a little bit, and I'd say even the last couple have maybe even gone down in quality. And I'm not sure that if I just keep doing them right now the way that I am, where I just kind of open it up, do 1 hour of figure drawing, that I'll actually progress anymore. For sure, I'll continue to internalize some of you're always learning something when you practice. So it's really about, am I actually being as effective as I can in my practice? And so one of the things that I want to say with respect to like kind of trying to master things or understand things, one really useful tool is this idea of like stepping back and going back to fundamentals. And so, I'll use an analogy of working out. So in addition to doing art, I also do a lot of working out. And one of the pieces of advice when you hit a plateau, let's say you're weightlifting, and you're kind of hitting a plateau where you don't seem to be getting any stronger. The advice is not to continue to push yourself through that generally. The advice tends to be take a step back, like lower the weight by 10%, focus on more fundamental aspects, like focus on your form and making sure that you're executing things properly, and then build your way back up. And in the same way, I can apply the same kind of intuition and the same logic to what we're doing here. So instead of just continuing to try and push through these figures, I feel like I need to kind of take a step back, kind of dial it back 10, 15, 20%, and focus on some fundamentals. So for example, one of the fundamentals that is often needs to be practiced in figure drawing is this idea of mannequinization. And this is something that I haven't actually touched in a while. But this is like a really, really important aspect to try and give your figure drawings some three-dimensionality and to really give them some weight. And it actually plays into the ideas like proportionality, like gesture, and like posing, those things that I've been trying to study in this series. So all this is to say, this kind of like, long speech and this idea about like kind of drawing on this stoic philosophy is that we can kind of take this idea of like when you get stuck in, for me, I find this very helpful. When you get stuck in growing or learning or developing, sometimes it pays off to just take a step back and go back to the fundamentals and learn the fundamentals. And I think when you start to, if you listen to, let's say, like I was recently listening to Jeff Watts talk about the approach that they take at the Watts Atelier. And I was listening to this and I probably heard him say the word fundamentals 5 or 10 different times because they really focus on, okay, do you understand the fundamentals and how good are you? And he makes it a point to say that, even at the instructor level, people are still going back and reassessing and re-looking at and redoing fundamentals and filling gaps there. I've also heard this talked about so much with like sports and like high levels of sports. So for example, in the NBA, I think like Michael Jordan often talks about how strong his fundamentals were, and I think Kobe Bryant, another legend of the game, probably has said something similar or talked about things in a similar way. So we're now going to apply this. Again, this is the way broadly, and we're going to apply this to where we see it here and kind of pull it back and do a Mannequinization drawing. And so that's actually what has been playing alongside this monologue, is me doing a master study of an artist named Brian Knox, and I'll leave some information about him below. But he was a former instructor at the Watts Atelier, and now works, I believe he has his own academy in Germany, in Europe somewhere. But he did this really awesome Mannequinization drawing of the male figure from the back. And so I'm just going to kind of do a study of this and kind of like internalize some of that process. Now, I didn't really talk much about what Mannequinization is. I realized, like I kind of mentioned it a little bit. If you want to learn more about that, Proco has a great video, and maybe I'll try and link that if I can remember in the video down below. But if you're stuck in your figure drawing and you feel like right now you have hit some kind of plateau in your drawing in general, maybe this is something that you can come back to, or this idea of, okay, let me take a step back, and rather than continuing to push myself forward, I'm going to actually regress 10 or 15, 20% in my drawings, go back towards fundamentals and re-practice some of those, and then try and build up again from there. So I think that's everything from today, and we will see you tomorrow for day 63. I hope that this little speech has motivated you to draw today if you haven't already.
So when possible, I'm going to try and get into the habit of doing voiceovers on the time-lapse just to add a little more information. So in addition to doing the master copy, the drawing of the Mannequinization, I also went in and tried to identify what I could understand about anatomy based on, what I know so far. And I started labeling where some of these muscle groups should be and just note a little bit better how Brian Knox simplified these in his drawing. Also at this stage, you might notice that I'm continuing to kind of remeasure and recheck proportions, again, just to kind of, better internalize some of those ideas about how the figure should be and how they should be structured. In total, this drawing took about an hour, which is the same as any of my other figure drawings. So kind of interesting that a master study really requires the same level of attention and the same level of thought as drawing originally from a reference or drawing from life.